Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for watching The Chop, where we chop it up with candidates for City Council here in Harlem. My name is Jordan Stockdale of Higher Harlem.
And I'm Shana Harmongoff, where we will be chopping it up on the most important issues: affordable housing, protecting our small businesses, and providing jobs and programs for our young people.
So watch the first episode of The Chop right here.
All right, Jordan, we're all set.
All right, fantastic. So let's go ahead and start. Athena, we are so excited that you joined The Chop today. We are interviewing all of the candidates for District 9 in Harlem to hear their stories and hear their platform. And we really appreciate you joining today. My name is Jordan Stockdale of Higher Harlem.
And good morning, Soror Athena Moore. And I am Shana Harmongoff. As you know, you're Soror. And we're just so excited to have you here today on The Chop, that you're able to chop it up with us. And so we want to get started and just ask you about who you are and why you decided to run for City Council District 9, and just who you are.
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here on CHOP. It's an honor to be here as a candidate for New York City District 9. I've had the privilege of working since 2017 when I was inspired by so many women and people of color running for office and stepping into the rink. And I threw my hat in at that time because I thought it was important for me to voice my concerns and to be an advocate for our community. I was a first-time candidate then, and I came in third in the top 3 of a 13 candidate race. And in that time, I learned a tremendous amount about how to better serve the community, how to use my platform to uplift others, and to be a bridge to the services that our community so needs and deserves. I wanted to share also that I knew then that I would continue to press on, to keep faith and to keep hope. Given my 30 years in public service, I've always wanted to do nothing more than to be able to be a vehicle for change and support in my community. I'm also a daughter of New York City Housing Authority, a daughter of NYCHA. I grew up in low-income housing and in poverty. And it is important to me that my platform and my candidacy continue to provide opportunities and to let the community know that all things are possible. My mother battled mental illness, and my family fought for a long time in just trying to make sure that we could access the needed services. My father passed when I was 6 of substance use, and that obviously had a critical impact on my life. But together with a strong grandmother who was a sharecropper from the South, she raised me and my siblings to do the best that we can, prioritizing education. As a first-generation college student and the first in my immediate family to get a master's degree, I knew that that would be the vehicle to continue to uplift myself and to bring my community along where possible for change and to address the needs and issues that so plagued our community. So I just want to say that that is largely the motivation and the reasons why my service in government and my service in Harlem has been so critical on the needs that are pressing our communities today.
And thank you for sharing your story. And just, based on your story, how does your platform relate to your story? And what are some of kind of the more interesting pieces of your platform?
Yes, thank you for that. Of course, because housing is a critical issue in the district, in District 9. It has been an issue that continues to be part of my platform. And because I was raised, as I mentioned, in public housing, I know firsthand the conditions and the needs of those who are serving and living in our communities. I will continue to make affordable housing and access to better quality services a part of my platform. I will continue to advocate not only for those residents living in low-income housing, but also for those residents and homeowners who are trying to strive to have greater access as working class and middle class families. I am a homeowner myself. I understand the struggle of what it means to come from nothing to then create something and then to try to build and expand upon that. And I want to make sure that I'm a bridge to communities to make sure affordable housing is prioritized. Whether you're in a Mitchell-Lama co-op, an HDFC, if you're a private homeowner, or if you're in public housing. A second issue that's really critical to me is the COVID-19 pandemic. My platform will continue to provide support for economic recovery during these perilous and unprecedented times. Over the past year in particular, I've been continuing to serve the community on the ground, providing PPE, supplies, sanitizer, masks, continuing to be a bridge to hospitals and health clinics. I've established testing sites in Harlem. I've continued to be a bridge to the borough president's vaccine task force, and on regular weekly Zoom calls with Harlem and Morningside Heights and East Harlem and Washington Heights elected officials, continuing to report out to the community what the pandemic has done to impact our community, but to also provide resources, information, help to actually get appointments for those who are lacking services or information. And so I will continue to make economic recovery a part of my platform. Small businesses have been critically in need at this time. I've worked on the ground with many of the umbrella organizations that serve our small businesses, as well as small businesses directly. So I will continue to advocate for minority women in business enterprises, for storefronters, for entrepreneurs, and those owners in our community who are just trying to survive. At this time, we know that federal relief has been a major topic of interest, and how do we make sure that that relief gets to our local businesses and families? And I will continue to prioritize that, working with the Bradhurst Merchants Association, working with the 125th Street Business Improvement District, where I've served on the board, working with the Frederick Douglass Business Alliance, which I've continued to be a vehicle of support to that corridor. I'm also working with Harlem Park to Park, which is another network that is now involved in the renaissance, the second renaissance, if you will, of Harlem, and making sure that those businesses have supports. So those are three major critical issues, but without saying anything further about the rest, I just want to briefly state that education and public safety, civic engagement, and arts and culture are also just as important to me and what I will do in this candidacy for City Council.
Thank you so much, Athena. You've really answered two of our questions that we were going to ask you, especially it was one of the questions was how do we preserve the longtime standing of these small businesses that have been displaced, especially during COVID. But I want to now switch gears and talk about gentrification, because Harlem is experiencing lots of gentrification, which has led to some long-term businesses closing, displacement, and some racial animosity. What would your role be to help solve these issues, particularly on race issues?
Yes. So I know that the mayor just announced a racial justice task force, and I happen to have longstanding relationships with the chair of that task force. We've had the opportunity to serve when I was a nonprofit executive, and we've continued to be in communications about the things that our communities need. So I will utilize my platform as a candidate and a city council member in order to facilitate and foster positive communications that bring back resources to our community, but also to be part of the strategic planning. We've come out of a long year of, unfortunate circumstances. We've watched on national TV just how much the plight of social justice has negatively impacted Black and Brown communities. And I feel strongly that the advocacy that we started must continue. It's the reason that I established a new platform during the pandemic called Civically Yours, because I believe strongly that in order to continue to address racial justice issues, that we must use our civic networks. So my work with the NAACP will continue, my work with the New York Urban League and the National Action Network. All of them have been supportive of me, and I will continue to work collaboratively with them in order to fight for equity, in order to fight for, voter rights, as well as our civil rights. And I believe wholeheartedly that the spirits of all of those who were lost in this past year in particular, whether we're talking about Breonna Taylor or George Floyd or any of the others, that I will not rest until we have ensured that we've done everything we can to make sure that justice prevails, and that our young people, the next generation, that they also know that they always have a voice with me in advocating for our communities.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You touched on this earlier, and it sparked my curiosity about your plan to improve education in Harlem. How do we do that?
Yes, so education is critical. We've just inherited a new chancellor, Maisha Porter, in New York City. I'm excited about that because it's the first Black woman chancellor, and I will continue to work with her and her administration. I've been on the ground serving in my capacity for the past 7 years as the Borough President's Director for Northern Manhattan with the CEC, Community Education Council 5, which is the district that Central Harlem schools are located in, as well as CEC 3, which borders CEC 5, and it encompasses also some of the West Harlem and mid-Manhattan schools. But what's significant is that I have the relationships and the experience already in place, working with Superintendent Donica Rux, who currently oversees the district, as well as with our CEC, Community Education Council members. I am currently working with Pamela Stewart, who is the president of that body, and we have worked with the parent and school leadership teams within the district. I can tell you firsthand that I've helped to facilitate decisions about budget allocations for schools in the district. I've helped to facilitate Zooms focused on school reopening plans, as well as on technology needs. We know in COVID-19 that so many of our young people in our schools did not have the same technology access and Wi-Fi, and we have to make sure that continues, that resources continues to flow into the communities that are hardest hit and underserved. So I will continue to use my relationships with groups like Silicon Harlem and our Education, Youth, and Libraries Committee of Community Board 10, which I've been a liaison to. And those are all things that will help us to advance an education agenda that is equitable for our young people, for our families and our parents.
So that was you're answering a lot of my questions already, which is great. Because my next question was going to be, what groups are you most excited about working with? And so I just want to kind of know, out of all the groups you've listed, what are you most excited? Who are you most excited to work with once you're the next city council?
Yeah. Thank you, Shana. There's so many, because I've been working so collaboratively and in partnership for so long. It's hard to isolate just one set of agencies, but I will tell you that my work with arts and culture groups embody who I am, even beyond a candidate. You know, I'm a proud Black woman, a mother. I'm someone who has long been a cultural historian, if you will, just preserving what I can of the culture and knowledge that's been passed on to me. You know, I always talk about my experience as a public policy expert with a master's in public policy, but few people know that I'm also a dancer and a poet and a writer. And I'm someone who organizes cultural gatherings quite frequently because it's my way of gathering the village. And in the African community, in the Black community, and certainly in Harlem, making sure that you are not just standing alone, but always tapping into your connections culturally to your village and to your history is so critical, and it's who I am. So the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce is one of those groups that I work with, and the Harlem Arts Alliance over this past year, hosting town hall meetings. I've brought in the Department of Cultural Affairs and brought in members of the City Council like Majority Leader Lori Ocampo. I've brought in other collaboratives like the Harlem Cultural Alliance, National Black Theater and Dance Theater of Harlem. You know, these are all our legacy organizations and institutions that have preserved Black culture in Harlem for generations. And I will do everything that I can in my candidacy and while a city council member to make sure we preserve the historic legacy that is not just a beacon for Harlem, but a beacon for the world. I will do everything that I can. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about, you know, being able to help young people. In particular, I know that our youth are facing serious issues right now. From the gun violence advocacy, this weekend I'll be out there helping with the gun buyback program, but I've also been on the ground helping as we've had tragic circumstances emerge in Harlem, like the 10-year-old boy who was recently, unfortunately, killed by his mother's boyfriend. I will continue to speak out because, you know, we cannot continue to allow our children under our watch to not be cared for and nurtured and supported. I've always mentored countless interns through my office, over 100 that I can actually specifically refer to as young people I've poured into. And I want to make sure that for them and my daughter and the generations that's to come, that we always make sure to impart the knowledge and wisdom that's been given to us. I stand on great shoulders, and I'm humbled every day by how many folks have given me an opportunity, told me that it was possible and that I could, despite all the obstacles. So that spirit of resiliency, that spirit of I can do anything, that spirit of, you know, making sure I'm really standing on the shoulders of those before me, that's what I want to continue to advocate for in my candidacy as city council member. I'm passionate about that.
I love hearing you talk about the promise of Harlem and the culture. And that's what brought me here. I'm not a Harlemite, but what brought me here was, you know, reading about the culture as a kid and going, this is where I want to be. And so you talked about poetry. I don't know if you're going to do this, but just wanted to ask the question because I love poetry. Would you happen to read a little bit of a poem for us?
Well, what I can tell you is my memory of poems that I knew by heart is a little rusty right now since I'm on the campaign trail. But I will tell you that A Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou is one of my favorite of all times. And I was blessed to meet her. And just to be in her energy just continues to inspire me. I will also tell you that, you know, in my youth, I certainly rapped, right? As a hip hop connoisseur coming up, I came up at a time in the South Bronx when hip hop was just being started. And so the sense that we could pull a crate of records out onto the street in a schoolyard and pull out the turntable and just free flow. My name then was Lady Love, and I could definitely drop a verse from that. You know, I'm the LADY, the LOVE, lady love is what they call me. I'm devastating, never hating, always loving. I'm mistaken, always rocking, never stopping laughing. I'm a performing in mind, thinking about my always take a chance of romance. And after that, I love to dance because dance and poetry was always in there. So I can share that with you for sure. And now with my daughter, she's always inspiring me. My daughter is a budding artist in her own right, and whatever I can do to cultivate that, I do. And lastly, I'll share that Sweet Honey in the Rock has always been both an inspiration for their music as a soundtrack for the civil rights movement, and in their own poetry and lyrics. And one of the songs that I hold dear and I take it everywhere with me is "We Who Believe in Freedom Shall Not Rest." We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. And that's something that continues to guide me all the time.
So I would say I've known you, Athena, now for I think 4.5 years, and I never knew that you could rap. Okay, so I know poetry was in your background. I even knew a little bit of singing, but I never knew you could rap. And then you spit a little something for us here on the Chop, which was really incredible. So we thank you for that. Now, how can people get in contact with you or want to help with your campaign?
Definitely. So we have a wonderful campaign. I'm pleased, I must say, Shana, that I need to tell our listening audience that in just 3 weeks of my getting into this race, that we raised over $30,000, and that's significant. And we were able to get all of our in-district contributions as well as to get our petition signed, which you know is critical to us getting on the ballot. So I'm excited about that. And people can reach out to me at athenamoore.com. They can also come to my website, athenamoore.com. They can also reach me on all social media channels, Athena Moore NYC, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram.
Thank you. So we've got a fun little lightning round just to close it out, just fun questions. The first being, what's your favorite soul food spot in Harlem?
Yes, I'm old school, so I'm always gonna go back to Sylvia's, you know, but I'm a bridge builder too, remember? So I don't throw out the old and just take the new. So my girl Melba's is always on the other side, and you know she's an extension of Sylvia's lineage. And it's hard to leave out my new generation sisters. You know, I've been over to Ruby's Vintage quite a bit. I'm actually going there tonight.
Me too. I'll probably see you there.
Yes, shout out to our sister Nicoa Evans for, you know, bringing the new flavor as well.
Definitely.
Okay, so if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
Wow, my superpower. That's a good one. I know. In these hard times, I think my superpower would just be healing. I know that so many people are just struggling still. You know, whether it's with the pandemic or just in their own lives. Mental health, I mentioned to you, was critical in terms of my own family. And I just want to be a vehicle for healing for our communities. And I know this is a transformative period, a time of change. And whatever I can do to just be a compassionate leader, you know, someone who understands the human plight, but the human spirit, and that is strong. That would be my superpower, just healing this community.
I'm glad you said that, and Jordan will ask the next question, but I want to say that I've been guessing some of the people's superpowers, and I would have said for you, Superwoman, because you're a mom, you're a Black woman, you've been in politics for decades. I'm not trying to say that you're old or anything, but you've been around, you have a lot of experience. I see you everywhere. You're like a second Gail Brewer to me. And I would say Superwoman because I feel like you're everywhere doing a lot of different things and you've multitasked this thing called life very beautifully. And so I would say your superpower in my eyes is Superwoman.
Oh, thank you so much, Shana. That means so much to me. It really does.
what's your favorite story that's based in Harlem, book in Harlem, or movie?
Oh, wow. It's interesting. One of my current sister friends, co-sister friend, is working on the current movie called Harlem. And that's something that I want to continue to support because I believe we have to tell the story about Harlem now. But I'm also a fellow member of the Abyssinian Baptist Church. And Adam Clayton Powell, the third, which you know, is a legacy in Harlem, has continued to inspire me, the Reverend Dr. Adam Clayton Powell Jr. III. And I know that he was a trailblazer and someone that really understood the importance of having a voice in public office, but also never forgetting about the root of your community and how you can serve them. And so that's continued inspiration. I also just kicked off my campaign at the Harriet Tubman statue. And that statue has so much meaning and significance to me, not only because one of my mentors, C. Virginia Fields, actually, when she was Manhattan Borough President, was responsible for putting that statue there and funding it. And now we can come there in this generation and pay homage. And Harriet was a warrior. You know, my name that was given to me, Athena, I rarely talk about it, but my mom gave me that name. And I told you she was mentally ill. So I never got to hear from her why or how she selected the name. But it was a muse, it was a guiding force for me because it meant goddess of wisdom and warfare. And I often hold that with such pride because I know that it was one of the things that kept me going in education. It kept me going, you know, when I didn't necessarily feel that I was good enough or knowledgeable enough or worthy enough. That sense that the goddess of wisdom was in there, you know, kept encouraging me. And the warfare, you know, I didn't always have a voice. I didn't always speak out. I didn't always feel comfortable in public service. And now, you know, when I look at myself years later, to see myself speaking in a way that is a vehicle for matters of social justice and matters of health and equity and humanity, I understand now that that name was a gift. And lastly, just my last name, Moore. You know, my slogan for this campaign is Harlem deserves more. And why that's so critical is because my paternal grandfather was a Baptist minister. And he is the one, and that part of my family is the one that first taught me the scripture, through God, all things are possible. And every year we meet as a family and have our reunions, and we always talk about that scripture. And it's what is with me this day, every day, driving and motivating my life and my service. So I hope that that helps me just to take the real guidance that I feel I've gotten from the Creator through my name and through my experiences to help for a greater good and a cause that's bigger than just myself.
Yeah. Wow. So one more lightning question and then we'll wrap it up. Bodega with a cat or without a cat?
Bodega with a cat, you said?
Or without a cat?
Or without a cat?
You know, back in the day, there was those bodegas with a cat. Would you prefer a bodega with a cat or without a cat? Don't act like you don't know that you ain't seen those cats, Athena.
I know.
Come on now. I remember
with the cat. One, because I've always had cats in my life growing up, but two, because you know that's the bodega that you know the cat was taking care of things, so you could eat there and feel all right. So I'm gonna say bodega with the cat for sure.
Okay, and you know there wasn't gonna be no rats in those stores because the cats keep the rats away.
Saying. You could eat there and know the cat took care of everything, right?
So thank you,
Definitely.
Athena, for chopping it up with me and Jordan today. This was truly a wonderful wonderful show today. And like I said, I've known you for a while. We're sorority sisters. We're even a part of a group that we've started in 2018, I think, called Sisters in Politics. And so I know you very well. Think you're doing great work. And so again, thank you for chopping it up with me and Jordan.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Jordan, and thank you, Shana. I so appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching our first episode. We really appreciate it. Learn more about the other candidates here
On the chop.
on the chop.
Chop.
All right.